Another week and we're still on OSHA. While we finish getting everything cleaned up, we're going to go through the gasket set here. Obviously, to start with, we're going to have the head gaskets. Pretty standard, no big deal. Just make sure everything's clean and dry. And we take a look. It's got front here, and the argument about which side you actually put up doesn't matter, because one side is going to be like this and one side is going to be the other side. So it doesn't really matter which one goes up on which side. But just make sure all your passages remain. So we are around the studs on the bottom, or the there's a word there I'm losing. But then make sure all of our holes line up, and they do, all of our passages and whatnot. So we've got all that cleared up from when we were doing the initial clean. So we've got that in place. Next step will be drop the heads on, get them torqued down. We can get to the intake, and there'll be some install tricks there. Now again, the engine is from an 89, so I got an 89 gasket kit, but that was the fuel injected engine. So we're gonna have some gaskets here we're not gonna use because we're going carbureted. So first one, we've got the water neck gasket, which is fine, we'll be able to use that. We have some exhaust gaskets here, which we have some over there anyway. I had my kit, so I'll just throw those in my parts bin. EGR gasket, don't need. Rubber, whatever, China seal gaskets, don't need. We've got some cork valve cover gaskets. I'll throw them in my pile because I do prefer the rubber ones. Here we have the lower intake gasket, and these should be able to work for what we're doing. These do have a specific head side versus intake side, so we need to make sure our alignment's there. This is going to be the upper intake gasket, which we don't have. I'll throw that in case I need it. This, I believe, is the distributor O-ring, which our distributor came with one, so we're good there. I'm not really sure off the top of my head what either of these guys are, but again, I'll throw them in my box just in case, because I do a lot of these Fords. So out of that entire head gasket kit, we'll be using the head gaskets. We'll be using the intake gaskets, and we'll be using the water neck gasket. And that's pretty much it. The rest of it we either don't need or already have different versions of. So we'll bring these guys over. And the next kit we're going to go through is going to be the timing cover gasket set. We'll go through that in a moment. All right, so we went through the base gasket set, and we've got the heads in the intake installed. We have the distributor where it wants to be. We've got it should be in time. I've got the carburetor loose set in. I don't have it bolted down or anything yet. So again, heads are on. So we are going to focus on the timing kit. You have the correct water neck on it as well. This one needs to be at a 45 to clear everything. So we are getting underway. We're going to go through the next set of gaskets and see what we're working with here. So one thing that I noticed in my last gasket set, and I forgot about, were a couple of gaskets for the back of the heads. They're just an oval gasket that had 2 holes in it. And you can't see it where I'm at, but on the factory version with the catalytics, there is a crossover tube that goes from one side of the head to the other. And they do make a block-off plate for those when you delete everything, which I don't have the plate, but that's what those gaskets are for. So I will eventually get the block-off plate for it. Just a couple bucks, just have to order them. But going from there, again, we're going to get into the timing component set, or the timing cover gasket set, which is this guy here. So this isn't a real complicated kit. First, you've got the actual front seal, and that's what the crankshaft goes through. So you can find the actual timing cover that we're using, and that is hiding. Let's see, I might have that in the tank, so I'm gonna have to clean that out. But this is one that I'm using just to be able to hold the bolts in place so we know where they're at. So one of them is going to be this front timing seal. 3 of them are going to be the oil pan gasket seals. You're going to have one for this corner, one for this corner, and one for the run. we are using the one-piece oil pan gasket, so none of those are going to be needed. There's 3 different versions of a water pump gasket depending what kind of pump that you have. So the way that these run and these are angled are all going to be a little bit different. So coming up here, so we've got this one. We've got this one. And we've got this one. So it's just a matter of matching up which one you have. I believe this is the one that we're going to need. Again, this here is the front oil seal. And then this one here is going to be the main seal for the timing cover, which is going to pop up right here. There is a dowel location to hold them in place. Taking a look. I might have that reversed. Oh, maybe not. So I have to take a look, make sure that we've got everything in the right spot as it needs to be. There we go. That's looking pretty close. Yep, that. So again, you can see a little knockout ring here for whether or not you still have the dowels. So I do have the dowel on one side, the other side came out. I believe it is still in the cover, so we'll have to knock that loose. These are the 3-piece for the oil pan, and this is going to be for the fuel pump, which we don't have. We're going to be running a mechanical pump. So again, not a super complicated kit. Just got to make sure you've got the right pieces that are going on. We've got the first steps of the timing cover on. Now, one of the things to pay attention to when you've got the one-piece oil pan gasket, it is not impossible, but it is tricky to do, to put the timing cover on after the oil pan. Generally speaking, you want to have the cover on so when you put the oil pan on, you get everything where it needs to be. Because it is kind of a trick to get into that groove and get everything lined up. But I do have it done. We've got the oil pan bolt started, and then we've got the upper timing cover bolt started, right? The little gold guys there. So that'll kind of lock it in place. Not going to crank down the bolts yet because I still want to have a little bit of movement to get everything else set up. You can see clearly where the water pump goes, and then we'll be checking our gasket up against that, which again, if we take a peek here, we want to take a look at the angle of that guy versus the angle of that. And then obviously we do have our 3 against the upper. So we want to see where we're lined up at. So those are good, those are good. Nope. If we line these guys up, that is way off. If we try and flip it around this way and line these guys up, then those are in the wrong direction. So it's not that one. Now again, flipping through this way, we want to line up our 3 top bolt hole locations, and then we want to make sure all of our bolt holes line up, and then we want to make sure that our water neck direction. So this is going to be the guy we're after in this direction. So then we can take our water pump here. We're going to reuse the old water pump because I have no reason to believe it's bad. Get that in the right orientation here. And then we're going to start with 1 bolt just to kind of line it up. Now, if you did it right and you've got your old bolts in location, go ahead and use them. I did grab a handful of bolts just to be sure, but I'll go ahead and start with these because I had them. The only thing that may be different is which ones are the studs and which ones are the bolts. Worst case scenario, after the fact, if we need to switch one out for putting on an accessory, we can. But I like to believe that we put all these right where they're at. So I'm going to start with the top center bolt, line up the water pump, line up the gasket, and just go one at a time and get things started. Now we got the water pump on, did some playing around with some different hardware pieces, had to buy some new ones, had a few that we were able to reuse, but we've got everything in. So we're going to start working on the accessories a little bit. We got to get the crank pulley on. Depending on how the brackets go, we might have to move the ones that have the studs around and whatnot. But that's going to be the next step there. Coming around, what we're going to start on, though, is going to be some of the wiring. Specifically, we've got to get the distributor wired up. We've got to get the ignition wired up. And eventually, we're going to have to get the alternator wired up. So we're getting close on the wiring. So we're going to hook the battery back up, and then we're going to start trying to find a 12-volt switched source to fire up the distributor. The other thing we're going to work on, if you recall from earlier, having some issues with the neutral safety switch and the ignition and all that. So our fix for it is going to be this racing switch. So be arming the system, and then we'll have the push button ignition. So we will get into wiring that. We just need to find a home for it. What a lot of folks will do is put it right here where the stereo is, but we want to keep the stereo. So I'm not sure where we're going to mount it yet. Maybe underneath, like down here or something. Or maybe we'll build a console that we can put him here or something. I don't know. We'll figure a spot. But for now, we are going to attempt to wire the ignition through this so we can have our push button momentary. But the first step is going to be finding that 12-volt switch for the distributor. So with these and the HDI, it does want to see a full 12-volt, which I do not have the resistor wired up in the ignition here. We've discussed that on other projects. So pretty much I'm just going to be poking and prodding lines here, figuring out which one's going to give me what I want. I'll have Austin inside working the key once we hook the battery back up. So we'll see what we can find out there. At this point, I did find a couple of sources to get the next step done. So I found what I am sure is the ignition that I ultimately want to use, although it's a little bit thin. I think it'll work right down here. There's going to be a 12-volt source, and that wraps around and goes up to the distributor. And then I do have something going from the constant, 12-volt constant off the battery, wrapping around that I can use for the ignition switch, and we'll eventually wire up that switch panel. But for right now, I just want to make sure everything works. We did give it a shot, and it is attempting to, but that battery is pretty well shot. So I do have that on the charger right now to give us something. In the meantime, we've been working with the accessories a little bit. So I did have to change out one to put a stud in. I got to find a bolt for that. We've got all the bracketry on. We're going to be probably bypassing the AC for right now. The AC did work in the old one, but going from the 79 to the 89, I'm not sure what hoses and whatnot I would need to make work for it all. I can see one of the threaded fittings there. Oh, I think the other one's an internal thread. So just getting everything to hook up, getting it to wire right. I'm not sure I've got to do. The AC pump was on this side on the 4-cylinder. So got some stuff to figure out. I do have some ports I've got to fill. That one's going to be the coolant temp sensor. I know we're going to need an oil sensor. We're going to need a voltage meter. We might do the 3 of those on a separate little gauge pack that you can get. I know we got to put valve covers on, do a better job routing the wires. But we're getting close, and let me see. We've had the battery and the charger for a little bit. Let's see what happens if I can blow another wire. So we get in, key on. Grab my little power wire, and then I'm pretty sure it was that red wire there. Make sure we're neutral. And nothing. All right, back to the drawing board. Had the wrong wire. Wasn't my 12-volt source. So let's see what happens. So we've got some cranking, and we've still got a dead battery. So I'm going to let the battery charge overnight, and that's our next step of progress. We took it out for fixed. So we're going to do the dumbest thing in the world, and we're going to attempt to see if this does anything. So we've got the key turn. He's going to touch the wire to the wire. I got a gnat or a mosquito here that needs to go away. I'm just going to put a spray of starting fluid in just to see what will happen. We don't want to run this at all because there's not enough oil in it and there's no coolant running to it. We're just kind of curious about the work, if we can hear it just kind of bark off. I don't have vacuum tubes hooked up. I don't have an actual fuel line hooked up. This is the wrong way to do this. Don't do this.
I just tap the wire?
Yep.
Okay. Ready?
Go ahead. Okay, hold it down. Hold it down again. One more time. Okay, not enough battery. We'll try this again in the morning. It's now the next morning. We did a little bit of work off the camera. We've got, I don't remember if we had the fan bolted up or not. We went and did some measuring. We deleted the smog pumps. We had to get a different size belt for it. We got one that works. For those keeping track, it was a 060-845, 85 1/4 for the overall length. That keeps everything else, just eliminates the smog pump. See, what else did we do? We hand tightened the valve covers on just to have something on. Put oil filter on. We started doing the oil, but because we don't have all the bolts in the valve cover, it's kind of seeping a little bit. So again, we are going to do a real quick try just to see if it burps off. Be sure as soon as it starts, Austin, that you're ready to turn the key back off again, because we don't need to run this for very long. All right, put the key in, turn it twice until you get that second buzz. You remember what wires to touch?
The right wire.
Yep.
Ready?
All right, make sure you're in neutral.
Okay.
All right. Do it again.
We're gonna hold it or tap it?
Hold it down. Kill it. All right, try it again.
Hold it.
Yep. Stop it. Woo!
Something's happening?
We'll be back. Alrighty, try it again. Let's get that out the way. Alright, try it again. Hold it. Alright, kill it. It fires. We got another day with a few small things done. We got some new hardware for the valve covers, got them bolted down. We got the manifolds put back on. Again, we got the accessories kind of started. We got the belt on. Did a little bit of wiring. I got a couple of hoses hooked up for some of the emissions stuff. Things left to do. I have a couple of ports to install in the intake. Obviously, I got to put the radiator in and all the hoses and all that. I've got to get the hold down clamp for the distributor, and we've got to get a adapter for the throttle cable because the way I've been trying to do it isn't quite working. We do have a couple pieces on order. I know eventually we're gonna have to get some power steering lines, but again, last time we got it to burp off a little bit. I'm gonna play with the timing a touch. I've got a little bit of fuel in there and we should be good to go. We're gonna try and fire it up. We do have oil in there now, so we're gonna fire it up and see if we can get it to run for a second with fuel in the carburetor. So, alrighty, let it rip, Tater Chip. Whoa, that backfired a little. All right, try it again. Try it again. Hang on. Okay, try it. Do it again. All right, One more time. All right, again. Try it again. All right, got it. All right, so the next step, we're gonna put the radiator in, get some coolant, plug the ports, and then hook up a fuel pump to it and see if we can get it running long enough to dial in the timing on it. But we got to run a little bit more. Couple of pops, couple of backfires, a few things caught on fire, but nothing too bad. All right, this one's mostly for Austin's friends, but here we go. Tried setting up an alternate fuel source, couldn't quite get that to work, but for now, go ahead. All right, take two. Go ahead. Do it again. 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 Okay, do it. Almost. Take whatever. Ready? Do it again. It lives. All right, with one major hurdle crossed with getting the engine running, it's time to reevaluate our list and make a new one. So if we go back to one of our original lists, remove engine and transmission, we got that done. Replace brake booster and master, we've got that done for the most part. Clean engine bay, finish differential install, plumb brakes we still need to do, prep the 302 we did. Racing seats, we're not going to do those. We've got the halos now. Body mods, not really into that. Hatch lock, I have the stuff to do, just need to put them on. Carpet lighting, all that's going to be a little further down the way. So for right now, oh hey look, we got...
It's a different list.
That's the list for my truck. Haha, let's find a new piece of cardboard. All right. List 2. We've got install radiator. So we've got the radiator setting in place, but there's two little clamps that go over the top of it that hold it into place. I had them not too long ago. I've misplaced them at the moment, but I will find them. We're kind of going front to back, not necessarily order of importance. So once we have the radiator, obviously we want to find ways to keep the coolant in the engine. So there's a coolant bypass that goes from the water pump to the outlet neck. And then because we're not going to be running the heater, we've got a line that we have to plug for that. So we've got the H2O bypass
/ plug.
And plug. All right, what's next?
The intake outlet plug. I don't know, I can't read your handwriting.
Intake coolant plug.
Yeah.
So on the factory heads, coolant plug, they had a coolant crossover in the back And I think if I remember right, it has something to do with the catalytics or the air pump or something like that. But we deleted the system, but now there's an open coolant passage at the back of the heads. So there is a little kind of an oblong piece that will bolt in there to seal it up. Buddy of mine says he's got a set of those. If not, then we can always order something.
You got the heat coolant plug.
So one of the other things, again, just sticking with the coolant, there is a port on the front side that on the original had like a T-fitting or something onto it. We don't need that for anything. We've got a spot for the coolant temp sensor, so we're good. So another intake plug.
Throttle bracket.
Okay, moving on off of the coolant, the throttle itself. I've tried a couple of the different brackets that I have to hook up the throttle. Did some research and they actually make a throttle plate that makes it really easy. We've already got that ordered, should be here in a couple of days. So we've got throttle plate.
Disc clamp.
The distributor is in and we had it firing, so we know it's in a relatively decent spot. The hold down clamp, the bolt's got some paint in it, or the threaded boss has got some paint in it, so I gotta clean that out. So we've got the distributor clamp.
Oil tube.
We've got an oil dipstick tube and the dipstick itself. I have no idea what happened to the original one. We bought another one, so oil dipstick.
Oil line.
Power steering lines. So taking a look between the 79 and the 89, the power steering lines actually look to be the same. So it's just getting a set of lines to them.
Sway bar links.
We got new sway bar links and we have new transmission crossmember bushings that we're going to put in. The sway bar link kit, we got one that was 1 inch lower because we did put the drop springs in here, so we'll make sure that they fit. If I absolutely need to for clearance, there is enough room in there. I can cut them a little bit shorter. So the sway link kit, and then the transmission crossmember kit. So the crossmember off of the 89, excuse me, with the manual transmission, the boss in that was a bit wider, so I had to cut it down to make it fit. Somewhere along the line, I did lose one of the bushings, so we did get another bushing kit. I will still have to trim that down a little bit to fit, but we've got the pieces here. So trans crossmember bushings.
Fuel pump and wiring.
Fuel pump. For our test fire, I tried to use a click-clack that I had, and I don't know, for some reason we're not getting it to work. We did get another one today, so we're going to wire that up. To start, once we get everything else done, I'm going to run that up top just for testing, but ultimately we are going to install that back by the fuel tank. So we've got fuel pump, and then wiring it up. We're going to be wiring, I don't think I have it in here. We're going to be wiring a 4-switch racing panel. One's going to be live, one's going to be a push button start, and there'll be 3 additional ones. One's going to run the distributor, one's going to run the fuel pump, and we've got a third one if we decide to put electric fans or something on it later. We've got room for that. So fuel pump wiring, we're also going to put ignition wiring with that.
That's it for this list.
All right, so that basically gets us to the firewall at this point. So going to the inside, you can't smell, obviously, but we did put some spray on sound deadener, and we're going to let that kind of cook overnight. We need to install the seats.
Dash.
We need to tighten up the column. Because again, we removed the steering column to put the manual transmission pedal assembly in and do some changes underneath. So it's kind of there, it's just not tightened down, the hood release and all that. The other thing while we're there is we've got to finish putting the dash back together. I'm not sure how many of the factory gauges I'm going to be able to make work. So worst case, we are going to get one of them triple gauge pods, just so we know what's going on while we figure out the rest of it. So tighten column, we're going to put dash, and under that we're going to put gauges. We've got the seats we already talked about. Eventually we're going to get a set a carpet. That may or may not happen sooner rather than later. We did get a hump kit for the manual transmission. It is a little bit different cutout, and it gives you a spot to mount the shift plate and shift boot and all that. So we'll put hump kit. And this is just the stuff to essentially make everything run. We'll have a different list for the other stuff. As we get going back, we need to finish installing or reinstalling the exhaust. And this one we might need a couple of additional clamps for. We need to hook up the speedometer or get another speedometer cable. We've got the clutch cable installed finally, so we're good there.
We do need to sharpen out the edges because it's a little rough. Remember?
On
The clutch pedal, so it'll...
So with the transmission tunnel of the clutch pedal is here, but there's a rod that runs across to the passenger side, and then that's where the quadrant is. There is one spot there that does tend to hit, so it does, you start pushing the pedal down, there's a bit of a hang up and you got to push it a little bit more. So I'll try and get in there. I really don't want to have to take that pedal assembly back out again. So I'm going to try and get in there with a pry bar and a hammer and give me just a little more clearance. It does work. There's just a little bit of a hiccup there. So we'll put that as part of the dash with gauges and clutch pedal. And then we need diff fluid.
Did you check?
I haven't checked yet. Okay. So I've got a couple of different weights here. With the limited slip differential or the track lock differential, it does require friction modifier. A lot of your synthetic fluids come with friction modifier. Always check your bottle. And take a peek over here real quick. Oh, let's see. So I do have some synthetic 7590 and I have some synthetic 75-140. Neither one of these specifically say that there's friction modifier in it. Usually it will tell you down below here with modifier. So I would have to either get some more fluid that has that, or it does come in a separate bottle. If we're not needing to run synthetic, then I do have a couple of quarts of just straight up 80-90, which is fairly common. And then it's just a matter of getting that friction modifier for it. So I just need to verify what that rear end wants for fluid weight. And then we do have the oil in. I do have coolant that we can put in. Once we get the power steering lines, I have power steering fluid. Oh, I forgot the biggest one, what set us apart from day one.
Gotcha.
Plum brakes. So that's kind of been what this whole journey is about, is making the brakes work. So we had to change the engine to make the brakes work. So those are the things that we need to do to actually get it running. Now the extra, we want the carpet kit. We need to figure out the lighting. We've got one headlight that's out. We know that for sure. I don't remember if it's a low beam or a high beam. It is a high beam. So I can always take a look at the parts car and see if that one works so we can convert them over. We also need to make sure like the brake light switch and the reverse light switch and all that works. Reverse lights aren't super important. They're not legal. As a worst case, that third switch that we have in the rocker switch we're installing, for the time being, I can always hook that up to reverse lights as well. But we want to take a look at the lighting. We do want to figure out something with the stereo. This one does have a factory 8-track player, and it'd be kind of cool if we can keep that. That might be where we end up putting that switch panel though. Ultimately, we will be putting in like a Bluetooth stereo or something you can hook the phones up to. Something that'll give us a charging port for the phones and whatnot. Carpet, we already said, the lighting, the stereo. We do want to dye the interior. Make it black. We've had a little communication issue. I say yay, he says nay, but I definitely want the hatch struts to keep the thing from falling off my head.
I had it up the other day and that was perfectly fine.
I got a bigger head than you. Ultimately, we are going to have to replace the tires. These would be good for just running around town and kind of testing everything. But ultimately, especially if we're going to get any real miles on it, we are going to want to change them tires. So, anything else we can think of for the extras?
New gauge cluster.
Possibly down the road, we'll switch out the gauges. We're talking way far down the road, though.
Shift knob.
Shift knob. He doesn't like the.
We'll see how it feels when I drive it.
He doesn't like the cue ball shift knob. I keep trying to tell him it's essentially going to be exactly what a Hearst knob feels like. So for right now, we have one, so we're going to run with that. Once we get everything else done and money is spent where we don't really need to spend it, we can take a look at some of this extra stuff. Ultimately, paint and body will be on there. We're going to take off the side molding, things that we don't really need to put on the list for now. But starting tomorrow, or technically later today, we're going to start knocking some of this out. And the goal is, today is Friday, or it's early Saturday morning. The goal is Sunday, by the end of the day, to at least try and drive this out of here. Everything may not be done and working, but at least enough where, hey, let's try and drive it out of the shop. So that's our goal for right now. But it's been a long day. We did get a few things done. We've got our list made. Tomorrow, later today, is another day.